a very well-known investor one time told me that he thinks he knows who Satoshi is. And he said, well, I think it's one of 200 people. And I said, it's a lot of people. Like, how did you narrow it down to these 200 people? And he said, well, there was a conference that happened, I think in Antigua. And at that conference, there's about 200 people. And it was everyone who was interested in digital money or digital payments, et cetera, and cryptography and like all these details that ended up in Bitcoin. And he says the odds that that person who created Bitcoin was not on that beach at that conference, very low.
HBO released this documentary and they claimed to reveal who Satoshi was, the inventor of Bitcoin. They said it was a guy named Peter Todd. I watched the documentary. I was not that convinced that it was this guy, Peter Todd. What do you make of this?
HBO's in the entertainment business, baby. Okay. And I'm sure I didn't watch the documentary. I just can read Twitter for 5 minutes and the internet sleuths quickly had all the clips up and were explaining, what they got right, what they didn't get right, etc. I don't know who Satoshi is. I don't think it's Peter Todd. Peter Todd says it's not him. I think that if somebody had uncovered Satoshi, I don't think they would make a movie about it. I think they'd be breaking news. I think that it would be kind of a smoking gun. It'd be on CNN and CNBC and Bloomberg and those places, not in an HBO documentary that took, months and months and months to edit and cut. I also think that people want to know who Satoshi is for all the wrong reasons. One of the things that would be most interesting to me, and I've thought about this, is if I had the chance to interview Satoshi, what would I ask? And I think one of the first things would just be like, why did you create it? Why did you walk away? And why did you not tell anyone? And I think if you ask those three questions, you could learn 80-90% of everything you need to know about Satoshi. Because why did Satoshi create Bitcoin will tell you a lot about their view of the world, where they thought was going on in the world in their late 2000s, how they looked at things like the global financial crisis, how they thought about technology and its impact in society. Right? There's all these things that kind of are around. Why did this person create this thing? Imagine if the answer was just like, I was just screwing around in, my dorm room and created this thing and it seemed to work, right? That'd be a way different answer than some profound philosophical view as to why Bitcoin was important. So I think that's a great one. Why did you walk away? Was it out of fear? One of the things that people will talk about is Satoshi walked away around a time where somebody had said that they started to talk to governments and intelligence agencies about this. And I think there was a presentation that was given. Satoshi disappeared. Was it fear? Was it always the plan? Was there some sort of self-sacrifice saying, hey, look, I know that this is important, but I need to disappear for it to be successful? It'd be fascinating to understand that. And then thinking about why Satoshi made so many of the decisions in terms of how it got launched, created, holding the coins, made the first 50 unspendable, all these like different details will tell you a lot about how they thought about the actual technology and whether it was intentional or not for it to be successful. So I don't think I'll ever get that chance, but it's an interesting thought exercise. I will say that a very well-known investor one time told me that he thinks he knows who Satoshi is. And so I was very surprised that this person had a theory. And I said, who do you think it is? And he said, well, I think it's one of 200 people. And I said, that's a lot of people. Like, how did you narrow it down to these 200 people? And this individual was involved in digital payments in the early 2000s, late 1990s. And he said, well, there was a conference that happened, I think in Antigua. And at that conference, there was about 200 people, and it was everyone who was interested in digital money or digital payments, et cetera, and cryptography and like all these details that ended up in Bitcoin. And he says the odds that that person who created Bitcoin was not on that beach at that conference, very low. And so he's like, I think it was one of the 200 people that were there, which pretty fascinating way to think about, who was Satoshi? Did they come out of the blue and nobody knew who they were? Or were they hiding in plain sight for years? And it was somebody who was actually very involved in kind of the cypherpunk movement, digital payments, digital currencies, etc. I have no clue, but it's fun to think about.
So one of the pieces to the theory in the HBO documentary for Peter Todd is that he was, I think, a college student when he coded this super program. And that would assume that this one guy, as a 19, 20-year-old, was, the smartest guy ever, maybe, to incorporate all these details and have so much foresight. And I thought it was pretty funny. Multiple times in the documentary, he was like, yeah, I am Satoshi. as if like he would say that in a joke, but then he would also be like, that's exactly what Satoshi would say to throw you off the scent. And
so he was basically like messing with the with the camera.
It was like, okay, what would a spy say in this situation? They would admit to being a spy because, of course, they're not a spy. But then really it's like there's layers and layers and layers. They are a spy. Yeah. So I think the documentary was really playing into that. I wasn't convinced, really. I don't think it was this guy.
I do think the young person is probably more likely than not. Again, who knows? One of the arguments would be, hey, you have to be a very seasoned programmer to be able to understand all these details, etc. I think more importantly is not so much being a seasoned programmer. Obviously, you have to be skilled to do something like this. But I do think that it takes young people to be radically kind of thinking outside the box. And so just like there's a calcification of your mind as you get older, and you can try your best to fight it. But, again, I'm 36 and already I talk to people who are in their early 20s and I'm like, oh man, I really got to, like, this is something I need to work at, is to make sure that I don't get set in my ways. And so something as simple as if you see the same idea tried over and over and over again, you begin to convince yourself like that idea doesn't work, but there may be something that changes in the world. And then all of a sudden the idea works. And so if you're the person who kept saying it's the idea that doesn't work and you didn't realize that this change happened. So for example, I think that if I remember correctly, I think it was Adam Backed, maybe it was Hal Finney, but I think it was Adam Backed. There was like a reusable proof of work that was created in like 2004 or something. Well, if all the digital currency attempts that happened in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s didn't have access to reusable proof of work, and they didn't work, and then by the time you saw somebody trying it in 2008, 2009, then you're like, this doesn't work. Like they've tried 20 times. Well, maybe one of the big breakthroughs was, well, now we have reusable proof of work. And so one of the things venture capitalists like to ask founders, which has now kind of become just like a intellectual contest, intellectual Olympics, is why now? Why should this company exist now? And so Uber, as the quintessential example, like, why did Uber work in 2009, but it might not have worked in 2002? Well, it's because the iPhone was created and the iPhone had GPS in it. And so now the rider and the driver both had GPS. And so you could find each other with very granular detail. Which corner are you on? And so the second that you now have to not call and say, hey, can somebody come pick me up on the corner of whatever? Instead, you have GPS in both the rider and the driver's phone. You now can connect people, and it unlocks this huge use case for something like Uber. And so the answer to why now with Uber was literally there's GPS in the iPhone. And so with Bitcoin, why now? A huge part was, well, there was proof of work. There's all these different things, but it probably took a younger person, in my mind, right, to kind of think of, hey, how do I put all these things together and try to solve, what has been a timeless computer science problem of the double spend.